We have the first official build of Windows 11. It's time to dive deep into the new OS. Microsoft has officially released the first build of Windows 11, and unlike that leaked build that we had last week, this is the first official look at what Microsoft is calling their next generation OS, Windows 11. So let's stop the blabbering and let's just dive deep. And before we do that, if you want to run this build, just join the Insider program, select Dev Cycle, and you will eventually get the latest Windows 11 builds downloaded to your machine. Let's dive in, shall we? So this is the new desktop experience. Probably looks somewhat familiar to Windows 10X, but this is Windows 11. Get used to it because this is coming. This is a new start experience. Obviously, it is centered, and there are new features and functionality, including like quick action items to recently used folders, or files, I should say. You also have a bunch of pinned apps and a very familiar looking scrolling app list that you can, yes, in fact, drag to the desktop if you want to put more icons on your desktop, although I'm pretty minimal and like just a couple folders only for really important items on my desktop. Opening that back up, you can see that this is the dark mode, by the way, and Microsoft has done a pretty good job with making most things cohesive, including the context menus are now following the theme, and you can see here even notifications about your OneDrive file that I forgot to click, don't ever show me this junk again, showing up. Also, widgets, as we knew, they are coming and they are here and they're fairly well done. I can't decide if I like this feature yet. It is very easy to turn off, which is good, but you can create effectively an endlessly scrolling news feed for your desktop if you just can't get enough content goodness. Well, actually, if you can't get enough, you try to drag it to your desktop, you just get links. But anyways, it scrolls forever and ever and ever, and you can also search directly from there, which is somewhat interesting, I guess, if that's what you really want to do. But it actually opens it up into Edge and not, searching within the confines of that widget window. And you can see here, it kind of is a little bit laggy. Keep in mind that this is a very first public build, and it is also running on a Surface Book 3 on Metal, which is why my aspect ratio, because I am a genius and chose a device that was not 16:9. You can now see the Surface Book 3 aspect ratio instead of proper 16:9. That being said, you can see here, you can scroll around, you can add widgets, you can remove widgets, it's just a widget universe. And I am sure that there's going to be a lot of third-party widgets that are going to plug in here. Like, hey, being able to tweet from here would be pretty nice, and being able to actually just catch up on Twitter in this feed would honestly be pretty good. Or more importantly, how about an RSS reader? Not this thing that Microsoft has created, but one that I actually create would actually be pretty useful at the end of the day. Cleaning up the desktop here, you can see when you pull up the menu, it's actually fairly quickly, but I think we should dive deep into the settings because this is something, I forgot to do that, there we go. This is something that Microsoft did not show off a lot in the past. They kind of briefly showed it off in screenshots or whatever, but we're going to dive deep here into the settings panel, and you can see nicely along the top, you get a system and display. Ooh, and look at those look at those animations Microsoft has there. Again, just a little bit of polish across the UI, and you can dig through here and understand what is going on with the display. Also, for people who were really concerned about not having the taskbar on multiple menus, Microsoft says that that is going to be coming. You'll see here in this video that it doesn't actually work yet, but it will eventually show up. But you cannot put your taskbar anywhere you want it. Microsoft is not letting you do that, and so it's only at the bottom. As you can see there, the Bluetooth settings updated, but when you click it, it does fire off the old Windows 10 style prompt. So, like I said, there's still some rough edges around the UI where they have not gotten to completely overhaul it yet, but it does look pretty good. Like, they've put some top level items that make things quick and easy. And if you like themes, Windows 11 is going to be great for you. You can just click themes and switch between, this is going from dark to light mode. As you will see here, it's not exactly smooth transitioning between. It kind of takes a second, and you can see that some very big processes are running in the background. But it does work. It does in fact work to switch quickly between dark and light. And light mode and dark mode aren't perfect again across the UI. There's definitely areas where light mode has just not been properly skinned to dark mode, and things just kind of break a little bit. But for the most part, it's pretty darn good. A lot of these customization settings are going to feel very familiar to what is in Windows 10. Not a whole lot has changed. I mean, there's definitely some updates with the start menu, obviously being able to put that over the left or in the center, which we'll look at here in a little bit. But there's definitely some changes. Also, the layout is completely different. I think it's so much better. This is just seems so much easier on the eyes. There's a lot more white space. There's a lot more dead space too, or dead space and white space are obviously very similar, but it's much easier on the eyes. And so there's also new sound profiles, which we are going to listen to here right now. And there you have it. Get used to those noises because they are going to be coming across the UI, or Windows, I should say, here to everybody. And right there, you can see a little bit more of that old legacy kind of interface, although they did at least update it so there are rounded corners, which is a big sort of hallmark feature of Windows 11 is rounded corners, no more straight cutting it. Just diving again through here, some of the start menu personalizations, you can see things you can easily turn off and on. Again, those toggles might have been around since Windows 8. I can't quite remember, but they look very Windows 8-like. And you can see you can turn folders off and on. Again, these features all existed in Windows 10 and allowed you to customize your start menu, and they have moved over to Windows 11. And you can see the widgets here, and you can turn things search off and on. I personally usually keep search off. Widgets, again, if you don't really want to use it, thankfully Microsoft is going to allow you to remove that from the taskbar, and they're not going to force it upon you like they have, basically requiring an internet connection for home. And again, you can see here, you can turn all these things off in the taskbar, which is, again, something just a nice little update, but it's nothing really going to blow the mind. You can see what they're talking about there is that expanded task or system tray, I should say, that allows you to turn those features or applications on and off if you really don't want to see them at the end of the day. So here you go. That's what it looks like when you move the start menu and the icons effectively over to the left. The one feature that is not available that I wish was there, I wish you could have the start in the bottom left and then the icons in the middle and then your system tray on the right. And if you like to hide your stuff, you can. But that would be effectively what I use with Taskbar X, and it's not available here, so maybe Taskbar X lives to see another day, but one day maybe it would have your start icon on the left, icons in the middle, and system tray on the right. Keeps things balanced, because as of right now with that system tray on the right, it honestly feels a little bit unbalanced because there's nothing in the far left corner. But this is the first build. Maybe Satya and Panos will give us more details or more features to play with here once this thing gets closer to shipping, which, by the way, will be happening in the fall. Microsoft has not said explicitly when, but I suspect it'll be probably around the October timeframe based on images of Microsoft using their screenshots all showing October dates. And don't be surprised if you see a Surface or a Microsoft event tied to this launch, because this is a big deal to launch Windows 11. And so they will probably do it with some new hero hardware, and that would make just kind of a lot of sense. And Microsoft has historically held events for hardware in the month of October. And you can see here again, time and language. Gaming is somewhat new to the Windows universe, and you can turn on gaming mode a little bit easier. Again, it's really just the UI that Microsoft has built for settings has now been completely updated and overhauled and gotten rid of what we saw on Windows 10. And I personally think that this is just a much better experience. Now, launching Edge, you can see here, doesn't really look all that different. And what this was a deep link inside of settings to make it all possible. And so some pretty big changes there. Or I should say, not big changes there with Edge. It's still looking pretty Windows 10-like, although I'm hoping that we'll eventually see some changes coming in the near future. Privacy and security, once again, not too much changing here, just really kind of moving some deck chairs around, but I think they move the deck chairs in the correct position. And again, easier just to find things that you need, hopefully, but I don't think too many people will be working deep into that too often. Windows Update looks familiar. Again, I don't think there's too many new settings or any new settings at all. It's very Windows 10-like, but again, just moving the deck chairs around the OS. And you can see there these system settings all back up in front and center. And Microsoft, I think generally speaking, I like the new settings setup. I think Microsoft did a good job here. I don't think they went too crazy. And I think well, I didn't end up in the legacy control panel at all. I think Microsoft has included many of the most used. I can almost guarantee you that if you need some of those nitty gritty settings, especially when it comes to things like networking and the like, you will definitely find yourself in the old world Windows, if you will, living that sort of legacy lifestyle. If that is your jam or something like that, that's definitely where you'll end up. But Focus Assist, this is something that I struggle with because I really don't like pop-up notifications in Windows at all. They're usually more distracting, so I keep it priority only, and I only have Teams messages, I believe, popping up because the calendar stuff shows up on my phone or my wrist, and so I don't typically do too much there. You can take a look at your storage. Again, nothing too crazy here, but just trying to do a deep and comprehensive look at everything that is happening in the system setting here. Multitasking is somewhat interesting because there's new Snap UI and a Snap Grid, by the way, which we will look at here in just a little bit. You can see, you can customize what your Alt-Tab experience is going to be like, but that's, again, nothing new to Windows, just a refreshed UI allowing you to access some of those settings. But, the reason why people like myself dig through these settings is where we find a lot of features that Microsoft may have not yet announced. And considering this is the first build, we need to do a lot more digging to get this stuff, just to see what else Microsoft has coming down the pipeline. And so we can try the search here, searching for gestures. Basically, Microsoft is bringing all of the trackpad UI gestures to Windows, which isn't a big surprise. It was kind of already in that way. And this is just digging through some of the advanced gesture functionality that Microsoft has included. Nothing earth-shattering here, but it just goes to show that, again, even in the deepest corners of the UI of settings, everything is pretty well covered here. And I'll actually try out some of these gestures just to show off the difference. And you can see that is XSplit in the bottom left. It's not an actual error. That's just what happens. It's a little bit of an inception because I'm recording the screen. And so we can do the other view here where the desktop view. And you can see the apps just moving into their collective areas to make it easier to see what is actually running on your device. And there it is. There is your legacy view of some of the control panel items popping up. But again, you can see how deep we got before we hit that component. Now, taking a look at the context menus, Microsoft actually did a pretty decent job here. They didn't skip on this. Although there are now there's context menus and then there's effectively advanced context menus to get to more information. So they've streamlined it a little bit, but it can be a couple more clicks depending on what you need. And so I think this looks actually pretty good. There's like a floating context menu here, also known as, I believe, a jump list, if that terminology is still being used. But we're going to take a look here at the new File Explorer, which is something else that Microsoft did not show off on stage when they did their big Windows 11 reveal. And so you can see it here, and the biggest difference at the end of the day is the ribbon area up top has been minimized. It's been minimized. And so it's just been collapsed. I think it works. I definitely need more time with the File Explorer to see, hey, is like this a good replacement for the legacy File Explorer, although I suspect it's very similar in functionality. Microsoft knows that power users love their File Explorer, and making changes in this regard can be quite dangerous. So nothing too earth-shattering here other than what you see right at the top level of the window Chrome. But that is the updated File Explorer experience. Again, it looks modern-ish. They're definitely not reinventing the wheel here, because power users like myself expect certain functionality, and Microsoft knows that they cannot change that. And again, looking at the context menu, seeing some consistency across the UI, which was a big thing that was missing in Windows 10, especially the early builds of Windows 10. So to see Windows 11 coming out of the gate with pretty consistent context menus is a good sign that they tried not to leave too many corners unchecked effectively with Windows. And so this is a positive thing here. So let's look at the notification center and action center areas. You can see, again, an updated UI. You get separate components now with the rounded corners, and you can scroll independently in each one. It's a good update. I never really cared too much about the old action center, and you can see the new animations here working in tandem across the UI. making it feel more cohesive at the end of the day. This is the quick settings. Again, looks familiar, but it's different. And so you can see what it looks like to add a new component to the quick settings here. And again, it's quick settings, so you're not going to get the whole universe shoved into that little box, but it does have a robust set of selection, including like Wi-Fi and other things that you need to add there. And so you can look through, like if you add a projection, I was trying to actually see if I could get to a secondary menu or secondary level to see if it was properly skinned, and it was matching the theme, which is good. And so here we're going to take a look at these. This is called the Snap Grid. And you can effectively pick different applications that are going to be in the area. And so pulling it up there, you effectively can snap it side by side. A little bit of inception at the end of the day. I'm going to close Teams down there so I don't have Teams popping back up, because I knew I was about to get a flurry of notifications and I didn't want it to interrupt this video. But you can see what it looks like to close an app. At the end of the day, there's a lot of sort of little productivity things built in. Like check this out. Like, so you can put things here and it didn't quite work. This is a little bit of an oddity where you have that center screen, but it's easily fixed. When it's working appropriately, you get what is called a snap group. Now, a snap group will allow you to effectively launch both applications back side by side right where you left them. And I was trying to use when you drag it to the edge to see if it would create the snap group. And in fact, it does, which is, again, another good thing that Microsoft has thought through the workflow of how people might alternatively create snap groups instead of going to the maximize button and manually selecting it there. I think this little snap group and snap grid UI is going to be a big deal in Windows 11 and something that once we get used to, it's like, how did we live without it? Now, the new store, when you download Windows 11, first of all, you need to download it and run updates to be able to enable the new store and the new File Explorer UI. And the new store is new. It's a better layout and a better design. It did have some performance issues, which I'm not sure are tied to my machine trying to record and do all this at the same time. It's a little not smooth scrolling, but I'm not too worried about it because, again, it's so early in the Windows 11 release cycle. It's just a new store with stories. That's what you see there below Among Us. Vendors can effectively put stories up there. The rest of it kind of looks and feels the same, although you can see that there's some nice animations here. Check this out. It's actually responsive to what is happening. That is a little thing. It's just a little thing that is going to make Windows 11 feel more modern and more fluid and more fast and fluid, if you're familiar with those old IE things. So there you go. That is the new store. And if you look at the bottom of the UI there, you can see little lines moving in and out showing which apps are actually opened. And when you close them, the little line shrinks. Okay, that is Windows 11 crammed into a very short-ish video showing you a first deep dive into the OS that Microsoft has created that's called Windows 11. Like I said, it will ship this fall, but we don't know the exact date yet. And again, this is the first public release. And honestly, I think it's a pretty good first public release. It's not complete. It's not completely optimized. There's still a lot of work to be done. I mean, Microsoft's not planning to ship this until October, so there's going to be a lot of bug fixing and patching and feature updates that are going to be coming over the summer. And so it's make sure, you stay here, because as we get new builds and we unlock new features, especially things like Android apps and the Teams experience, the new Teams experience are not included in this build. So there you go, guys. That is a first look at Windows 11, everything that was announced today. And as always, keep it subscribed here, because the only BS on this channel is me.